So as Brittany mentioned, this is using your mindset GPS to support student engagement and prevention work in a mostly virtual world with Dr. Chris Holloman. Chris is Associate Professor of Education, Psychology, and Public Policy at the University of Virginia and Director of the Motivate Lab. He conducts research on interventions grounded in theories of social and personality psychology, motivation, and human development. Much of his work has focused on examining the extent to which helping students find relevance in their coursework for their lives increases learning and interest. For example, he has worked with high school science teachers and students, remedial math instructors and students in community college, and parents of high school students to develop and test interventions that promote motivation and learning. Chris received his BA from Central College in 1993 and his PhD in social and experimental psychology from the University of Wisconsin in 2007. Prior to his career in psychology, he spent 6 years as a teacher, coach, and social worker in Iowa. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. Chris, go ahead and try that again. It looks like you're still muted.
Okay, how about now?
All good, thanks.
Awesome. I'll try it again. Thank you for that great introduction, Evie, and good morning, Ohio. I'm so pumped to be here to share some of these ideas with you. I'm not sure if it qualifies as wisdom, as Evie suggested, but it's certainly hard-won ideas about how to help people in practice as you work with young people and how you work on yourself as you're interacting with young people. And it's hard won by that. I mean, we spent time in classrooms working with people and just seeing how these things work as well as researching them. So super excited to be here with you today. And I want to note that it is 38 degrees here in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, just like it seems like it's a little chilly and snowy in Ohio. So with you all there, though I don't have any snow on the ground. And I want to point out that I'm here today with my fearless co-pilot, Travis Madry, who comes to us actually from the state of Texas. It's a little warmer in San Marcos. Travis spent 8 years as a high school teacher, and now he works as a lead designer on our team. So I want to thank Travis for being here today. So it's going to be interactive today, folks. We're going to do our best, despite those crazy times, to help you apply some of these ideas, not just think about them, but we're going to try some stuff out today. So hopefully you're up for that. First off, session structure. We're going to package this hour, or what do we have now? We've got 54 minutes into 4 bite-sized chunks, and each chunk's going to have a little bit of me talking and presenting some ideas or watching a video, and then having 5 minutes of reflective activities. And that's where you'll get to really start to apply your learnings. These reflection activities are a combo of private write, so you're going to want to have something to write on, a pencil and paper. Crayon works too. I don't recommend bloodletting, but if that's all you got, you could consider that. And then we'll have some poll questions for you to answer. And then if you have questions, we have a chat in the GoToMeeting. Ask questions anytime. Travis is monitoring those. Brittany and Evie are both also monitoring those. So they'll raise questions to me during the talk, but we also have 15 minutes at the end that will address a lot of your questions as well. But use that chat function, and some of you all are doing that already. So let's start by doing a little interaction, and let's try out both of these types of ways to interact, both the chat and the poll everywhere. So we're going to start with the chat. I want you to think about one word that represents how you're feeling right now. And I'd like you to enter it into the chat. And before you type, someone already hit overwhelmed, but before you hit enter, type it in, and then I'm going to count down from 5 to 1, and everyone is going to hit return at the same time. And we're going to see it's called a waterfall chat. So if you got the word, type it in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hit enter. What do we got? Oh, see it just running. The chat's running. Tired, concerned, unmotivated. Oh, we're going to do something about unmotivated. We got a lot of frustrated. Yeah, a lot of there's a wide range of affect here. Love the honesty. These are crazy times, And hopefully today, in the next hour or so, will get you feeling a little more positively activated, as we call it in the emotion literature. Oh, I didn't say, you all found the chat. Awesome. Okay, so that's a good starter to get people engaged. And if you have a small group, it's a lot easier to see where everybody's at. And if one person's really struggling, you can follow up with that person after your meeting. It's a great device. Okay. Second, we're interested in using Poll Everywhere to figure out where everybody's working, what county you're working in. So we asked you this on the pre-survey, but we thought, well, let's show this in real time. And this is a Travis Madry special here. So if you could go to, at the top of your screen, you should see polleverywhere.com, type in www in front of it into your browser, Firefox, Internet Explorer, wherever. Type that in, and you should be able to quickly just register, and then this question should pop up. Oh, and the link is in the chat. Thank you, Evie. If you click on Evie's comment, it's about the fifth from the bottom. That'll take you right there as well. We'll give everybody a couple minutes to go into Poll Everywhere. I see some people are typing it into the chat, which is cool. We're hoping to have people go to Poll Everywhere and click on the county they're in. We're having some green dots pop up. We'll just wait for that to populate here. I think Franklin is winning. Not that it's a competition, but maybe it is. Excellent. Is Franklin, Evie, is Franklin where Columbus is? Is that right? Christy's nodding her head. Okay. That is not surprising.
Got a lot more love from Lorain County than I would have expected. That's awesome.
Any other reactions, Evie? This is for you to you know your team better than I do.
Well, it's funny, as I see these markers pop up, I'm matching to my head, who do I know in Stark County who's here today? Who do I know from Belmont? Who do I know from Hamilton? So it's just really great thinking about how all of these people who would ordinarily be with us in Franklin County today were still able to join us from their respective spots, and nobody had to fight the weather. Not that you had to fight the weather either, but it's pretty nice for that kind of relief.
I sometimes fighting the weather these days is looking out the window and does it look like a good day or not? And then that's the pandemic version of fighting the weather. Like, am I going to get wet getting my garbage cans from the curb? So I appreciate you all doing this. And this is just another way to get people engaged early in a session, but also you're learning about people. So I'm learning a lot about you all. I don't know the Ohio prevention space all that well, although I was a social worker. I do know prevention. I did run an alcohol and drug education program at a small college in Iowa, but I don't know you all. So I'm getting to get a better sense of where people are. And you too, this is your chance to connect and see who else is with us today. So thank you for participating in that. So those are the two main ways that we're going to get you to interact with everybody. So the other way that we're getting some interaction is we, in advance, had you fill out a survey. Really appreciate about 100 or so, 160 people filled out the survey. I really appreciate that. And one of the things I thought you might be interested in is how long your colleagues have been working in this space. So most people have been working in this space between 1 and 5 years, but there's quite a spread. And the question was, how long have you worked as an adult ally? And most people are adult allies, but there's a group who aren't, who I presume are administrators or other support folks. So that's really interesting for me to see, but maybe for you to see as well about where everyone is. So that's me learning a little bit about you. So it gives me some context for this meeting and how I apply the ideas. Let me tell you a little bit more about us, and we'll get right into starting to learn about mindsets. So we're a part of the Motivate Lab, and our mission is to improve people's lives through rigorous motivation research. And we put improve lives first because we really are problem and community focused. We try to help people solve real world problems. And we want to do that in a way that is really closely tied to the research. And this comes from my background as a teacher and social worker, where I wanted to know what worked, but it was really hard to figure that out as a non-researcher. So we're trying to bring that to the streets, as it were. And our focus is on motivation. We don't know everything just because we have PhDs or we do research. We know our area. And if we come up with a group that has a problem that doesn't match motivation, we will pass them along to people who can help them. So that's where we come from. And we work exclusively in partnerships. And we partner with K-12 systems, schools, individual teachers. We also partner with higher ed, schools, systems, and teachers. And some of those are here. We also partner with policy organizations and funders like the Gates Foundation. But that's where our work is centered. And that's what I mean by these insights are hard won. We're out there working with folks to figure out what works and honestly what doesn't work a lot of the time. And what is the space we're in? We've talked a little bit how hard it is. Well, if you remember back in January, February of this year, when we got together, it looked like this, or ideally it did. People were excited, engaged to be with each other in person. And quickly it became like this. We were all little squares on the screen like we are now. A very different experience. And for most of us, including myself, teaching at the college level, I don't have a lot of experience teaching online, running these things online. So we quickly had to figure out what to do. We hoped online engagement looked like this. People are focused, they're engaged, they're interacting. But oftentimes it felt like this, that if people were there, engagement just wasn't working how we wanted it to. But even bigger problem is we didn't know if people were there. So sometimes they weren't there and we didn't know how to go get them and find them. So this is a really challenging space for all of us, students, educators, adult allies, all of us were struggling. And as you pointed out in your surveys, we asked you, do you have experience facilitating things online before the pandemic? And most of you said no. Some of you did have experience, fortunately, but most of you said no. We're all in this together. And when we asked you, what are you most struggling with in terms of student motivation and interacting with them online? I took all your responses and put it into a word cloud. And the big words that pop out to me are getting students engaged online. And I think if I did this with a whole bunch of K-12 teachers, they'd say the same thing. If I did this with college administrators, with their faculty, they'd say the same thing. This is a human problem we have right now. And maybe that seems obvious, but when you're stuck in trying to figure out a solution, sometimes you feel like you're the only one trying to solve this problem. You're not. We're all struggling with how we get engagement online. So we're going to teach you some tips around learning mindsets today, practices that you can use based on the science and research of the psychology of learning mindsets. And learning mindsets are students' beliefs about themselves as learners and their environment. And this applies to adults as well as it does to students, but so much of our work is centered on students, so that's where I'll come from, position the work. And the mindsets cohere to an acronym GPS. Growth mindset, which maybe many of you heard of in education. Purpose and relevance is a mindset about, are things relevant to me in my life? Growth mindset would be, can I grow, improve, and develop? And then, do I belong here? Do I have this sense of I fit in, I'm connected? So we're going to run through those mindsets today. And there's a huge literature on motivation and mindsets out there. Why do we pick these three? I'm glad you asked. We picked these three because one, you can measure these, whether you can ask students through surveys and surveys of adults, like I asked you to fill out some mindset questions in the pre-survey. They're malleable. That is, we can move them around by changing the environment, changing the classroom, changing how we structure an online learning session can actually help support students' learning mindsets. So they're malleable, they're changeable. And then three, they matter. Mindsets are related to important outcomes, whether it's adult life outcomes or it's outcomes in school, they matter. So that's why we picked those three mindsets. And we've got tons of research, and I can share more of the research with you later. This is not a research talk, though. I've got 2 slides on research, but most of it's on how can you use this stuff. All right, so let's get started on this. So I would like to pass it back to Brittany, who's going to play a video. And the narrator is our wonderful Travis. So I need to pass this back. Or Brittany, are you just going to take it away from me? Do I need to do anything? Did we lose Brittany?
mindset into an acronym, Mindset GPS. Just like the GPS in your phone that helps you navigate new places physically, your Mindset GPS can help you navigate psychological uncertainty, especially during transitions. During times of uncertainty, students tend to ask themselves 3 fundamental questions that determine their level of motivation. 1, can I do this? 2, do I want to do this? 3, do I belong here? One way to help students answer affirmatively to the question, can I do this, is to help them adopt a growth mindset. Coined by social psychologist Carol Dweck, growth mindset refers to a person's belief that skills and abilities can develop, especially through effort, persisting through difficulty, learning from mistakes, trying hard things, using effective strategies, and asking for help. When we adopt a growth mindset, we're more likely to stick with things longer, perform better, and enjoy what we're doing more than when we believe that our skills and abilities are fixed. When encouraging students to adopt growth mindsets, it is important to remember that having a growth mindset is only partially about believing that you can develop your skills and abilities. It is also about adopting specific behaviors that are consistent with these beliefs, particularly following difficulty and failure. Do you encourage students to revise their work and try again? Do you help them learn from mistakes? Do you offer a variety of different strategies when they're stuck, including encouraging students to ask for help? Without the associated behaviors, students and instructors are left with a false mindset, the belief that simply believing will lead to positive outcomes. You also need to act by approaching challenge and failure as opportunities to learn and to use a variety of effective strategies, including asking for help when needed. So the G in Mindset GPS is for growth, as in growth mindset. One way to help students answer affirmatively to the question, do I want to do this, is to help them see the purpose and relevance in what they're learning in your course. Decades of research have revealed that students need to perceive value for themselves in some way, and that there are many ways for learning to be valuable and therefore motivating for students. Although there are a variety of ways to find value in school, some ways of finding value in school tend to lead to more adaptive outcomes than others. We've listed some of the most powerful and positive sources of value on this screen. The most important thing to take away from this discussion about value is that students need to find their own value. Just like adults, students can hold several of these types of values at the same time. It's complicated. So a key ingredient as an instructor is to consider how you can help cultivate a variety of pathways for students to identify value for themselves in the material that they're learning in your course. From a motivational standpoint, it's better for students to identify the value for themselves rather than being told by someone else why they should find the material valuable. So the P in Mindset GPS is for purpose and relevance. One way to help students answer affirmatively to the question, do I belong here, is to help them feel like they are connected to, supported by, and respected by others in both academic and social aspects of the classroom. They need to trust their teachers and peers. They need to have the feeling that they fit into the context, particularly for students from traditionally marginalized, minoritized, and/or stigmatized groups. They need to feel like they are seen as a person of value whose perspective will be a positive contribution to the course. Finally, they need to be free from worry about whether or not they will fit in, fearing judgments based on a negative stereotype about their social group or uncertainty about whether or not they will be supported by teachers or peers. During the transition to new situations, like the beginning of a semester, everyone experiences uncertainty as they establish new routines, navigate new geography, and establish new social connections. This is especially true for students from traditionally underrepresented and minoritized groups in higher education, including Black and Hispanic students, students from lower income backgrounds, and first-generation students. During such transitions, it is important to help students frame their uncertainty about belonging as being an experience that is common to most students, and that many of these feelings can be temporary. As students adjust to their new surroundings, just like breaking in a new pair of shoes, the initial discomfort can dissipate. Finally, the S in Mindset GPS stands for sense of belonging. Mindset GPS includes a growth mindset, purpose and relevance, and a sense of belonging.
All right, so thank you, Travis, for that lovely video explanation of Mindset GPS in less than 5 minutes. So now what I'd like to do is give you an opportunity to reflect a little bit around your own mindsets. And This is going to be a device for us to, don't start timer yet. This is going to be a device we're going to do these activities. You're going to do it for you, and then I'm going to tell you how to apply it for your students, okay? So, all right, so this is the time where you get your paper and pencil out or your crayon, whatever. So you're going to have 2 minutes. And what I want you to do is think about the answer to this question and write it out. And it's important to write it out, really is. Why do you do youth prevention work? Why are you engaged in this? So 2 minutes, go, free write. Brittany's going to play a little mood music for us. Thank you, Brittany. About 30 seconds left. Okay, so I turned off my camera. I didn't mean to do that. So now that you've thought about that, what I'd like you to do now is try to summarize that thought into 1 or 2 words. One or two words, maybe 3, that summarize your why. You've got 58 seconds to do that. What are the main words? Summarize your why. Why are you in prevention? And this is still a private write. We're gonna share in a little bit. I see a few folks posting in the chat. That's okay, but we're gonna actually have you share in the Poll Everywhere platform here in 15 seconds. Okay, so now we'd like you to go back to the Poll Everywhere platform and share your 1, 2, 3 words about why, and that'll start to show up on my screen here. And again, the instructions are up top. We'll just see what happens here. After you've entered your words, just take a note of what other folks are writing. See how it aligns with your purpose and your why, maybe how some things are different. I love that people are also dropping stuff in the chat. That's great too. So as people are typing, you notice big words here like empowerment, change, youth. The bigger the word, the more folks are saying that. The computer doesn't, it's not an AI or artificial intelligence, so it doesn't know which words are connected to each other. We have to do that. But you can start to see how this could be a fun activity to do with your students, the folks you're working with, around any kind of question. If you want to see what's in people's heads and where it aligns and what ideas they have, this is a nice way to crowdsource it. The reason why we wanted you to do a couple words is to increase the probability that you have similar words with others. And so then you get the bigger words that sort of pop out. The other cool thing about this is you can see, some people, or hopefully a lot of you, were doing it on Poll Everywhere, but others were still dropping stuff in the chat. And one good practice of online facilitation, whether it's a meeting or a class, is have multiple ways for people to play. So if they can't get on the Poll Everywhere, oh, that's my timer. They can't get on the Poll Everywhere site, they can go back to the chat. It's nice to have multiple ways for people to get looped in. So we will save this and we will share this back with you all later. And I love the purpose of paying it forward that Mark just talked about. That I didn't really understand what paying it forward meant when I was 20. I get it now when I'm 50. But I really appreciate you all joining in on this. So as I was saying there, the application back to your youth and working with other folks is hopefully pretty apparent. But one thing you do, just ask students about their interests and have those populate either on a pre-survey like I did for this or in real time. And you just get some information that you can use that moving forward. You know more about them. You can help connect the work to what they're interested in. Students have so many cool interests that you may not even know about. They're more than just the cover of their books, as you probably know. And then, ask them why they're doing this and try to connect to that in really important ways, even more important now when you've got to really want to join a virtual meeting rather than seeing people in person. Okay, so that's activity number one. That's our big picture. Now we're going to do 3 dives into GPS, and we're going to spend a little time on each of those letters. And we're going to go in reverse order. We're going to start with S because I think sense of belonging is so missing right now in all of what we're doing. And it's the number one thing when teachers or coaches, anybody asks me, what can I do in online? How can I improve? It's like focus on the S. So we're going to start with there. And if technology ends and we can't finish this talk, at least you got the S. So as Travis talked about in the video, there is a really important aspect of belonging that I want to highlight here. And on the one hand, we often think about a sense of belonging as what are the positive things that draw me in? Connecting with peers, feeling cared for by teachers and mentors, having this sort of sense of I fit here. Those act as a magnet and pull people in. And we often think about that. We try to do things to attract people to join and feel like they're a part of the group. Those are good things. We should keep doing all those things. But there's another side of the coin. It is, why do people feel like they're not sure if they belong, or they know that they've gotten a message that says they don't belong? And these feelings of what we call belonging uncertainty act as weights that hold people down, that hold them back from engaging. And these things can be fears about what the work is going to be like, or the unknown. It's going to be really hard. It can be concerns about being stigmatized for body shape or gender identity, for example. It could be concern about confirming negative stereotypes about a group they identify with. Black boys and men in higher education are susceptible to stereotype threat in all sorts of ways, that there are negative stereotypes about Black people and how smart they are, and those act as weights. All of these things can create worry and concern that create additional barriers for students. And here's the thing that I want you to remember about this. As awesome as your session was last time, everyone felt connected. People who have worries and concerns about belonging, when they show up to the next session, those are just living just under the surface. So it doesn't take much to trigger those feelings to come back up. So you've always got to be thinking about What am I doing from that perspective? And until we abolish systemic racism in our country, Black and brown people, for example, are going to always feel this way. So I think that that is something that we want you to take away from this, that you're thinking about that and all these things that you're doing, because you have wonderful students who can go out there and solve world's problems, but they're being held back. And there are things you can do. So you might say, Chris, what can I do? I'm convinced. I'm glad you asked what you could do, because we have some ideas for you. So 3 types of strategies we're going to talk about related to belonging. We have inclusion routines, we've got engagement strategies, and we have closure routines. So inclusion routines are things that right when we start. So at the top, how do you get people engaged in the whole group in the beginning of a meeting? Well, you can ask them, how are you feeling? And type a word into the chat, right? So that's a great engagement strategy. It breaks the ice. It gets people engaged, and you learn something about where they are. Like I learned today, so many of you said you were hungry. And I was surprised by that. That's not uncommon when I work with students, but with adults, I'm hoping that's just because you didn't take time for breakfast. But if you are hungry because you need food, please do what you can to find food for yourself. But that's something I learned about you all today. The second are engagement strategies. What can you do during a session to break things up? Well, things like brain breaks and turn and talks and jigsaws are really great ideas. So a brain break is just something like we did a few minutes ago. Stop, reflect, do some writing, and then type your thoughts in. That's a break from processing information or whatever it was we were just doing. It's a switch over to something different. And finally, closure routines are things you do at the end that can be a little reflective. It can just be 1-minute questions. Hey, what's something you learned today? Or what are you still curious about? Or what are you unsure of? What do you want to learn more about? What do you want to do next time? What's the agenda item we should cover most important for our next meeting? Give them an opportunity to sit back and reflect. At the bottom of this slide, there is the citation. You can go online and you're going to have these slides so you can access this. But this Castle group has a lot of great tips for online. And this is one, they have 3 signature practices that these come from. So they're great. So let's go practice another belonging routine. How about that? You ready for that? Should we go for it? Well, even if you're not ready, we're going to do it anyway. That's all I asked. So inclusion strategy number 2, 2 minutes and 30 seconds this time. Pick an object around you. Maybe it's a picture on the wall. Maybe here's my buddies from Australia when I lived there for a year. Pick an object in your immediate environment and write the meaning it has to you. Why is this object meaningful to you? And Brittany, that's your cue for music. About 30 seconds left. Okay, so just like we did last time, the next step is to pick one or two words that summarize why this object is meaningful to you. And then we will post those and pull everywhere in just a second. 30 seconds, one or two words. Okay, so now if you could navigate back over to the Pull Everywhere platform, Evie has nicely dropped that link into the chat again if you need it. And we'll see, type your words in. We'll see what is important to people. Lots of family, connection with others, memories. Love. Can't forget about love in these times. And note there's silly in here, smile. Those are the things I keep around that make me smile. So this is a great activity, by the way, any meeting to spice it up. But remember, like, you want to do things with a purpose. And the purpose here is you're trying to connect people to each other. They learn about each other and you learn about them. And you can use that to help create a stronger community among folks. And you also might get a sense of, you know, what are people's trepidations as well. So just again, I'll transition to the next slide. We have all this information. We will share this with you as well. But it's really important to offer students the opportunity to connect with each other every time you meet. So, you know, I think when I talked with Evie a bit about like, why do young people do the prevention work? A lot of it is they want to connect with each other. You know, my teenagers, I've got 4 teenagers in my house. We have 5 kids total, 4 teenagers. And the thing they're dying to do is be with their friends. And so we have had to change our ground rules in our house. Like, they can actually play video games on their computers in their rooms, which we never allowed computers in rooms before, but they need private space so they can connect. We find they are playing these multiplayer games with each other, and they're all linked in with audio, video. Students young people really need to connect. And this social aspect is just as important as anything else you'll do, because that's going to be the glue that helps the work go. And then finally, give every student the opportunity for their voice to be heard, whether it's typing something in the chat or raising their hand and asking a question, whatever it is, allow them to express themselves and let their voice be heard every time you meet. Okay, that was the S. We're going reverse order. So P is next, right? I'm going to skip this slide because it's just a review of what we did, because I want to show you one of the research studies that we did. Actually, this was one of my former grad colleagues who ran this study. What we're doing is we're working on math with college students and their attitudes about math. And as you all probably know, a lot of people hate math, or they're afraid of math. They don't think they're good at math. And so one of the things we did was try to help people connect their purpose, you know, what's important to them, with learning math. And so we had 3 conditions. Students were randomly assigned to these conditions. One is a control group where they just write about the math they're learning. If they're learning about fractions, they write what they're learning about fractions. The second group is the lecture group. And this is, we tell them why math is important. You're going to need math for your future career, whether you're a nurse or an accountant or a lawyer, doesn't matter, you need math. And the third group was the right group, where they wrote about how math was relevant to their interests and their lives. What we found was something really interesting in terms of math performance and interest. We found that students who wrote about how math related to their lives did much better, significantly better than the other groups. And what's really important is the dark blue group is the lecture group, where we told them why math was important. That was no different than the control group, where they just wrote a summary. In fact, it was a little worse for students who weren't very confident. For students who are confident, there wasn't a difference. And we find this over and over again, that when we give students the opportunity to make the connection, it is much more motivating to them. So that is the big takeaway here for you. You need to help students figure out how what work you're doing with them relates to what they care about. You can't lecture them about it. It's got to be, they've got to figure it out for themselves. And what I want to point out, this is a graph of, or a chart. I was working with high school social studies teachers in New York City. Actually, I was working with a whole room of 150 teachers, and these were the 15 or 20 social studies teachers. I asked them, what is it that students bring, students from low income minority students that you work with in New York City, in this group of high schools, public schools, what strengths do they bring to learning? And they talked about students having personal experience with laws, the court systems, justice, and actually injustice, right, as being actually powerful to help students learn about social studies. And what I want to point out is that is so right, but it also applies to your role with students, is that you know a lot about the world. You know a lot of things that they don't. And so you can help bring that experience in, but you need to bring it in a way that connects to what they care about in their lived experience. So that's your major challenge, is bringing those connections in a way that's not you lecturing, you kids should think this is important because blah, 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 but helping them see, you can tell them about the world, maybe things they don't know, and they can tell you about their world, and together you can help them create connections. So, and finally, the last piece I want to emphasize here, there's a lot of ways to value stuff, guys. You can think, hey, I'm doing this work, prevention work, because it's useful for my future. I want to go into social work. It might be because I can make a difference. I care about my community. People are getting sick and dying here. I want to reduce that. People might think, it's just, I think about myself as a helping person, and this is part of my identity. You might just enjoy it, and this is important. Enjoy not just the work, but hanging out with other kids. And finally, this is important for my family. This is a part of I'm going to help, the broader community and especially my family. And there's lots of other reasons why that I didn't list here. These are some from the research literature that are pretty powerful. But just remember that when you're working with students, there's not one right way for them to find meaning and purpose and value. Just like there's not one right way for you to have meaning and purpose and value for you being an adult ally and doing prevention work. Okay, so are you ready for activity number 3, application activity number 3? This is going to be just a little different. So first off, don't start the timer yet. I want you to list out 3 to 5 of your personal values. If you get more than 5, that's great. Things you value, family, education, etc. Go for it. Oh, this is a private right. You're writing this on your own paper. Is something a little more challenging. I want you to take those values and think about your youth prevention work And I want you to think about how does engaging then in that work reflect those values? So connect the dots for me. Emily entered love, hope, and comfort. So you would write about how does doing youth prevention work affirm those values of love, hope, and comfort. This is, again, a private write. When in a minute 46, we will have you enter this into Pull Through. Okay, now the challenge. Can you take what you wrote and in one sentence drop that into Pull Everywhere? What is one really concise sentence that says, how does engaging in youth prevention work reflect your values? We're going to give this a shot. Again, you can link to the Pull Everywhere in the chat, thanks to Evie. And we'll see what it looks like to drop entire sentences in here. These are really powerful. I love that someone said, gives me the opportunity to evaluate my motivations. Yeah, when you're engaging with young people, if we're not constantly evaluating where we are, then we're not going to be able to authentically help them get to where they need to go. Because then education turns into this self-serving, I just get to tell younger people what to do and help you speak their truth. Oh, these are amazing. Thank you for sharing. I'm all pumped up. I'm signing up for this work, Evie. I'm signing up right now. Bring me back to my days as a social worker with 12 to 17-year-old boys who've been adjudicated and of something, drugs, violence, theft, whatever. This is awesome. Okay, we're going to have to continue because I have 8 minutes left to tell you about G. So we are gonna go to G, but before I do that, like a really specific application of this is do this as a warm-up activity as you start a meeting, for example, or you could do it at the end. But having them do this, and then if you have the capacity to do breakout groups with whatever conferencing software you're using, then get people to talk to each other. They love this. Students will come out of this and they will be very chatty and they will be very engaged. I almost 100% guaranteed this activity works in that way because people like to talk about what they care about, and then linking it to the work they're doing makes things meaningful, and then they learn about each other in really cool ways. So I just highly encourage you to take a shot to do that. Okay, finally, G, growth mindset. And the one thing I want to share about growth mindset is, growth mindset is often thought of as I just have to believe, then you can achieve, right? But I'm going to point out that that's actually what we call false mindset. So one common interpretation of all the research on growth mindset, which dates back to 1975 when Carol Dweck published her first article, is that basically all we need to tell students is you can do anything you want. All you got to do is try. The little engine that could, I think I can. But I'm going to tell you that, Carol and others have said, there's a big question about, is this really helpful? Because it's missing this really important aspect of growth mindset. It's that that it requires strategies, it requires learning from failure, and using your resources to get where you need to go. Growth mindset is not just I can believe it, but it's having a belief then opens you up to trying after you fail and to redo your approach when it's not working. So this is really important because oftentimes people walk away from a growth mindset session I do, and they're just thinking they got to exhort students to give effort. Well, guess what? Some of your students are trying really hard and they're not getting anywhere. And how do you feel when you try really, really hard over and over again and you don't get it? You start to feel dumb, right? You get frustrated, you feel ineffective. And that's where you can come in as the adult who has a bigger perspective and help provide some strategies and get them unstuck. So that's what we're going to do today around growth mindset, is to think about what unsticks students. I'm going to actually go past this data slide because I want to get to the activity. Trust me, there's a boatload of data on this and I can share it with you. But I want you to help students, if they fail, what are the behaviors, or if it's hard, what are the behaviors they need to engage in? Asking for help, trying new strategies, continuing to put in effort. From our surveys, one thing we found is when I asked you all, hey, can students learn new things, but they won't change their intelligence? 90% of you disagreed with this, which means you think, actually students can change their intelligence. That's a growth mindset. That's the orange. So 90% of you are in the growth mindset area for your students. But how did you react to the second question when I asked you, do your students believe that? Well, what you said is only about 50% of you thought students actually have a growth mindset. About half of you thought, well, maybe students have more of a fixed mindset. And that difference is where you can come in. That you can send messages and provide support to help boost more of those students up into the growth zone. How are we going to do that? Okay, we're going to do this in this way. Step one, you have 1 minute. Write down some ways that students typically have difficulty in the prevention work. Where do they struggle? What's hard for them? 1 minute. Write it down. Private write. Okay, so now that you've started to think about some ways that students typically struggle, I'd like you to think about on your own again, write down some ways that you typically provide supports to students. How do you help them get through their struggles? You have 2 minutes. What are some of the ways that you support Okay, so now that you have reflected on providing support, we would like you to go to Poll Everywhere and in one sentence, share one way, it says share your explanation, should say share one way that you provide support, one way that you really like, that you would want other people, there's 170 of you on here. What is one way you provide support you'd like other people to see? And we'll definitely make this available to you all so you can see the kinds of the ways in which your peers are providing support to students. Several people bring up listening and empathizing. Oh, these are great. Oh, that's a growth mindset. Help them understand failure is a way to learn. Awesome. Show them respect. Oh, it's so important. See why you all are doing this work. Provide the space. Yeah, sometimes we got to let it breathe. As adults, we can get so caught up and we got to have everything running on the clock and we got to be in charge. Like giving students the space to figure it out. Yeah, offering activities for engagement in this time is really key. Let this go on a little bit longer, see how many we can get here. I really want you all to be able to have this list. I haven't been counting, but listening is one of the top ones here. I'm impressed. Someone wrote, teach young people how to SPF. I don't know that acronym, SPF.
That's something that's really specific to the prevention field, the Strategic Prevention Framework.
Okay, I recognize that phrase from our first conversation. Okay, we're going to leave this open so people can keep typing in, but I want to transition to the Q&A time. So just to wrap this up, my ways of applying this activity we just did to you all is make sure that you're clearly communicating how you're providing support to students. Like, it's great that you listen and that you're doing that, but students may not realize that's the support you're providing. How are you making clear that you are there and available to listen? And how are you reaching out and providing multiple channels? Can they text you? Can they call you? Do they email you? You provide office hours, virtual office hours. What are you doing to provide that support and to listen to them? And focusing on, how are you encouraging them to focus on improvement? In the chat, there was some discussion around grading systems in the US are really fixed mindset systems, because you get one shot to do it, and you can't revise a test or a paper afterwards. And how many things in your professional life are one shot, or in your personal life? Very few things are one shot. Some are, that's for sure. But so many times we have an opportunity to revise, but we don't build that into our current grading system, so students aren't learning that. And the prevention works the same way. How are you structuring it so they get that feedback and they have opportunities to remediate and improve? So putting this all together and then opening it up for questions, we had 4 activities around the Mindset GPS framework today. We started off with sharing your purpose. How can you help students share their purpose? Then we talked about inclusion practices, starting the meeting, engaging during the middle, and closing strategies. For purpose in particular, we talked about how can you learn specific things about them and their values and help them connect that to the work. And finally, provide support and avoid false mindset. Don't just exhort them to try hard, actually provide the support they need, which might mean you have to learn something to provide them better support, right? So you need to have a growth mindset about how you're providing support. A couple other resources that will be available on the slides are, there's an article that my colleague Ian Kelleher and I wrote for Edutopia that lays some of these, a lot more of these ideas out. And we also have lots of stuff on our Motivate Lab website. So with that, I just want to say, I hope you can take these ideas and take students' questions into affirmative statements. So not can I do this, but yes, I can do it, etc. So I want to pause now and open it up for questions from the crowd. So Travis or Evie, are there place to start here?
I don't see anything yet, so I'll give people a couple of minutes to get their typing fingers ready. Folks, you guys can either put your question in the chat box, or you can raise your hand, let us know that you're interested in coming off of the microphone or coming onto the microphone. So while we're waiting for other audience questions, Chris, I know that a lot of us are deep into our program this year, and we're obviously still having struggles engaging young people. For me, I'm concerned that there's almost a norm of inactivity and a lack of participation at this point, because it's so different that young people might feel alienated by being one of the only people to speak up. So I was curious if you had any advice for how we might reset with our students now that we have all of these new tools like Poll Everywhere that might be a little bit more user-friendly in the virtual space, just to encourage young people to give the program another shot.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, it's a great question, and there's a lot of ways to do this. The key is going to be whether or not you can reach them if they're disengaged, right? How do you get them back? Oh, and by the way, Brittany, could you unmute Travis so that he can share any questions that come up? Thanks. So sending out surveys to students like we did before the meeting today is a great way to learn lots of stuff about where people are. Even the students who are engaged, they will give you insight about the students who aren't. So that's something that's important, or they can have some insight into that because they're struggling too. They're just overcoming them for whatever reason. The second thing, these apps like Poll Everywhere, this is a free one. or maybe it's not free. I'm not sure actually. Do we pay for it, Travis?
We did, but for fewer than 25 people, you can do any of the things that we did for free.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, so there's plenty of free options out there too. But these are ways, like I would suggest, handing it off to students. So if you've got some engaged students, brainstorming with them around how could we use this to engage more people, whether it's an app like Poll Everywhere or GroupMe or other text-based apps. There's one now that my kids are using a lot. It's called Discord. A lot of students are using it for video games, to do multiplayer games, but it's text, it's talk, it's video, it's super interactive. You can do so much with it. I think there is a way in there because students always have their phones with them.
So y'all are welcome
Thank you very much for that.
Sorry, y'all are welcome to type in some questions into the chat, and we'll pick out a few of them. In the meantime, I do have another question, Chris. So you've told us a good bit about supporting students' learning mindsets. How can that go wrong for each of the learning mindsets? Like, what are kind of the landmines we need to be aware of so that we don't accidentally step on them for each of those mindsets? If I'm sure they exist.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I'll go GP and S. So with growth mindset, the landmines are really coming off as preachy. Like, hey, you've just got to stick with this and have a growth mindset without providing the support and the structure that would reinforce a growth mindset. So coming off as preachy there and inauthentic. So another way I've seen it go wrong is praising effort when you don't know if there was effort. So someone might do something, you're like, oh, I can tell you worked really hard at this. And they're like, I spent 10 minutes on it. You have no clue about me. So when you're praising people, you want to try to give them feedback that's honest and that's real, but don't praise things that you can't see because you might be wrong and now you've lost all your credibility. Purpose, I think the big challenge was, lecturing about here's why it's meaningful to me, but not helping them figure out why it's meaningful to them. So stepping back out of that. And then with sense of belonging, it's being mindful of the messages of non-belonging you might be sending while you're trying to be positive and proactive. So for someone who's having a hard time with the technology, if the only way that they can interact with you is that technology, that's a big message of non-belonging. What's the way that if they're struggling, you can say, hey, can I call you on your phone? Or what are the ways that you can just be mindful that you could be well-intentioned, but for a group of students or one student in particular, it might be a message of non-belonging.
Thanks, Chris. We have a question in the chat, and that is, how do you combat kids feeling the need from both themselves and from their parents, so it's kind of pressure from both of those directions, to provide to the household at home and not prioritizing school? So that being a priority, it's kind of thrust upon them.
Yeah, this is such a good question, and it doesn't have a good answer. I think part of it has to do with the cultural expectations in the home. And by culture, I don't just mean black and brown, but I mean white people have culture too. There are norms and expectations in every household. So, trying to understand those so that you can support the student without getting into a direct power struggle match with the parents, I think is really key. So it's working with the student to figure out how they can advocate for themselves, and also figuring out how are you making the work, whether it's school or the prevention work, how are you making it attractive for them? So it's worthwhile for them to sort of go against the grain. But I don't think it's we have expectations of our kids that they've got to do their chores, and there are times when they've put off their schoolwork on Sunday night and they put all their chores off to Sunday night. We're tough choices. There are times when they do come in direct conflict for every student and every family. So I don't want to just say there's not one right answer, but I think it's empathizing with the student, understanding their situation, and then helping them connect the dots to why school or whatever the work is valuable and meaningful. So probably not like the great answer there. I'm sorry, but it's one I hear this a lot.
Thanks, Chris. And Taylor, thanks for that question. Also, if anybody wants to submit a question, you can just message me directly. You can find the drop down Travis Madry if you don't want everybody to see what your question is. But Chris, I'll ask another question. What does supporting students' growth mindset with our messaging actually look like? So like, what would be an example of like how that might look in conversation?
Yeah, so let's say a student was trying a project and it didn't go very well. Maybe they were trying an advertising campaign around drunk driving, and it didn't go well. Maybe, the messages didn't get sent out, or, the student maybe messed something up on the messaging platform, so the messages didn't go out. So it's how you approach giving the feedback. So it's being honest and figuring out where it is that, so I might say, Travis, see, this didn't happen. What do you think happened? What do you think went wrong? So starting there, getting the student's perspective. And if they bring up the things that you think went wrong, then you can dig into those and talk about, here's how we remediate and here's the support you're going to provide. If they missed it, then you can say, hey, here's something you missed. I know you can do this. Communicating that we've got a standard that we need to meet for this to happen. I know you can do it. Here's how we're going to get there together. So providing that honest feedback. So starting with them, understanding their perception, getting the honest feedback to happen, and then communicating your belief that they can do this, and here's the supports. We actually have a wise framing for feedback activity on our website that can help people think about how they approach those conversations.
Yep. Thanks, Chris.